Hello, everyone. I hope that we are on air. We had some technical difficulties, but everything seems to be working now. I'm not sure exactly. So just give me 1 second so we can check how it is working, and then we can start our webinar. So just a couple of minutes, maybe. We'll see how it works because it's all very new. And to be honest, this is my first webinar, so I'm kind of nervous. So just be a little bit patient. So we'll see. Okay, so um, okay, so we all know that right now it's a pretty good time to develop different skills and to learn something new. And of course, the first thing that comes into our mind is to invest our time into learning language. Just 1 second, sorry. Okay, so. Okay, I can see that I'm working. It's fine. It's working. So, um, so um, invest our time into learning language is one of the best ideas that we can come up now, especially when we are all locked on the quarantine and we don't have really much things to do, especially if you don't work or you work part time or something. So, practically, one of the major things that we need to think about is choosing the method of learning the language. And this is exactly what I'm going to talk to you about today. So I'm just going to give you a look into different methodologies, different methods, what and how you can learn. So I prepared a little presentation so you can see it over there. So you can maybe write down something that you need or something. So it's going to be more comfortable for both of us, for my side and for your side. So, why choosing the method of learning language is so important? Well, because this is the foundation of your future. Especially, we're talking about the moment when you start learning language from zero. If you haven't learned it before and you need to learn it from the beginning, then you need to be extra careful about this. You need to think and to be careful about think if it's the right one for you or not, if it's comparable to your personality, to your time, to your schedule, to your some personal specific moments or not. So when we talk about methods of learning language, of course there is certain grouping that you need to think about. So we will move from first page to the second, which I call the basic grouping. So technically, we can separate the learning process into three different categories. It's group learning, learning with tutor or with a private teacher, whatever you call it, and independent language learning. So it's basically when you learn it by yourself. Each of these approaches has its pluses and its minuses. There is something good, something bad in each one of them, and it's up to you to choose which one do you want to use, or maybe combine two of them, for example. It's also a possible idea. So when we talk about group learning, what is group learning? Group learning is the process or the approach when you study together with other people, people who has, let's say, similar ideas that you do, similar target that you do, and maybe similar level as you do have. So when we talk about the pluses and the minuses of this approach, let's start with the pluses. So the first and obvious plus is the experienced teacher leadership. So of course, it's mostly for most of the people, it's easier to learn language when there is someone leading them, telling them where to go, maybe correcting their mistakes, showing some alternative ways and stuff like that. So, experienced teacher leadership is what you get when you have a group with you. So, when you study inside the group. The second plus is communication inside the group, because when you are surrounded by the people with the similar level, similar aims, there is a certain environment being created, and it also leads us to the third plus, which is linguistic environment. Well, of course, it's not exactly the same as, for example, going abroad and studying there, but it's also a very helpful tool to create a linguistic environment. What does it mean? That you would be surrounded by the language and, let's say, to get as close as possible to realistic location. So of course, you can't just get to, like, I don't know, hop on a plane and fly to London. Yeah, for example, you don't have this option, but you can have your moment inside this group with whom you learn. So you imitate and create your own linguistic environment, which is also helpful to develop your language skills, to develop your communication skills, and so on. So those are the most obvious pluses, of course, and I'm not going to mention that there is a lot of options to choose from because group learning is super popular. So you can choose what you need, what is available for you, what you can afford. Let's say it's also a very important moment because everyone has their own different budget. So there is nothing to be ashamed of, and you choose what you can afford. But there are also a list of minuses, of course, as everywhere. So the first obvious minus is that everyone in the group supposedly have one level, and if your level would jump higher, let's say faster than others, or it was initially higher or lower, and you were put in the group with a different level, that also happens. I faced it. Then you're gonna have certain difficulties. So if you are of a lower level, then you would have to work harder and, let's say, to jump faster than others. And if you are higher than the rest of the group, then you're gonna have a trouble because you're gonna be basically bored with them. You're not gonna move forward because you already have this knowledge. So this also should be considered. Minus number two is in the group, there is no personal adjustment. What does it mean? No one cares inside the group if you move faster than others or slower than others. If there is any trouble that you faced, for example, There was a new topic, but you missed it. For example, you were sick or you were at work, you couldn't attend. Nobody cares. You have to do a homework, you have to do it by yourself to catch up with the rest of the team. And if you have, even during the lesson, if you have a complication and there is a big group and everyone else understood the problem or the task or the new rule and you didn't, still nobody would wait for you. So this is what we call a personal adjustment, and the group learning lacks it. And minus number three, which is also pretty important, is interpersonal relationship. What does it mean? It means that you may be unlucky and you may have not comfortable for you partnership inside the group. So what is the basic problem? The basic problem is that if you will feel psychologically uncomfortable with the fellow students in the group, your learning process would go slower or there would be no progress at all. So this is also something that you can't control, that you can't check. So this is also a danger. So what can we say? Uh, I would say that the group learning is one of the most widespread, popular means of learning the language. It's perfect for a motivated and communicative person, so the one who gets along with everybody fast, or maybe if you just simply don't care about others, you don't care about interpersonal relationship, and all you care is getting knowledge, then yes, it's also a good option. And in big cities like Moscow, there are like hundreds of schools that offer group learning, so you have a lot to choose from. Okay, I hope this is clear, so we can move to the next one. So the next one would be learning with tutor. So learning with a private teacher or individual mentor. Well, this is other most popular way of learning language, and it has its own pluses and minuses as well. So I'm gonna start with the pluses, of course. So the biggest, like big fat plus, is that you're gonna have not only experienced leader, like in the group learning as well, but this experienced leader would have a personal approach to you. So what do we mean by personal approach by a teacher? Uh, the right teacher or tutor, whatever you call it, first of all, should assess your everything. So it's not only your level of knowledge. If you have like a zero level, or you're at some point, you learned it before, or you just starting. It's also about certain details that should be considered while, let's say, planning the way this tutor would be working with you. So maybe the targets that you have, the aims, what for do you need your language? Maybe you just want to travel and you need to pick up some easy language or some basic spoken phrases. Or maybe you want to prepare for some exam, or you need it at work, or you need it for your career movement forward. So this should be considered as well widely. Also, there are certain personal moments that should be taken into consideration as well. So we are talking about maybe your psychological ability to digest the information. How do you prefer to communicate with your tutor? How do you work with material? Which way and which technique do you prefer, or more like you feel comfortable in? All those moments should be taken into consideration while planning the lessons. And of course, the third plus, obviously, is the high and fast results that you can get while working with the tutor. Um, the minuses are, let's say, not really minuses, but still. So the minus number one is the possible, or let's say probable, high cost of your classes, because learning in a group and learning with the personal teacher or the private tutor are two different things, and of course you have to pay for that. And the higher is qualification of your tutor, the more you would have to pay. So you have to be prepared for that. And minus number two is you need to search and maybe change few of them to find a really qualified tutor who would be the perfect fit for you. So it's also a challenge. All right, independent language learning. Of course, we all think about learning by yourself, and okay, like I don't want to waste money on tutor or group learning. I'm gonna do it myself. Um there are pluses and there are minuses. So let's say the obvious pluses is that right now we live in a digital age, and there is like a huge wide options, like the choice of resources and methodologies is just mind blowing, and you have a freedom to choose whatever you want, combining them according to your needs and what you feel comfortable in. And number two is obviously freedom of self organization. So you can organize your learning process as you wish. But there is a huge risk of mistakes, and it's especially dangerous for the beginners, because if you're going to do a mistake, nobody would correct you, and you would stick with this mistake, and it will, let's say, be critical later on. And second moment is if you're a person who can't maintain the self control and you don't have a high level of motivation, there would be no result. So, no self control and motivation, no result, unfortunately. So, okay, that was the basic groups. I think it's pretty clear. I hope you can choose the one that you need. And next one is, let's say, methodologies. So I'm just gonna do a quick run through. I hope it's not gonna be very boring and it can give you some information. So there are like many methodologies that come and go, evolve, merge. So all of them are interesting in some kind of way, but you need to choose what you want. So I decided to start with the Pimsleur's method. It was developed in late 60s of the 20th century, and it's all about listening. So this is the, let's say, the grandfather of the listening methodology, and it's all about immersing you into the um, into the language itself. So there is a set of audio classes that you have, about 90 as far as I remember, three stages. And each lesson contains certain sentences, phrases that you have to repeat after the speaker, and then you are getting involved into the dialogue. It's a good way to develop your listening skills and to pick up the pronunciation if you are an independent learner. It's pretty effective, but short, I would say. Okay, next one is Ilya Frank's reading method, which I respect. It's based on immersing into the language via literature. It was one of the ways that I used during my learning. because reading the literature gives you a lot of pluses, and it's pretty effective because exactly this method. You are reading, like during the process you read the adapted version of literature, you read the translation, and then you read the original form, and then it gets harder and harder and harder. It's pretty effective, and if you like reading, so it's an easy way to pick up a lot of phrases. Language schools, what do I mean here? uh, each big language school most probably develop their own methodology based on others. So when you get to some big language school, you probably would see some specific methodology. Mostly they are effective because they are based on a lot of experience and other methodologies. So don't be surprised if you get to a language school and you find out that they have their own specific methodology. Communicative approach. Well, this is the most popular approach in the past maybe 10 years, and it's the most widely used one. And this is the one that, for example, I use definitely mixed with others, but this is the foundation, like this is the basic approach. So it's all about teaching your student to communicate using various functions. So it's all about talking, understanding, being flexible, and stuff like that. So it's also um, very useful because that's what makes you talk. That's what we all need. And of course, the thing that all individual learners use, so it's computer assisted language learning. So it's basically learning via any online commercial product or computer program or mobile app. All of that falls into this category, and definitely it's useful. It's a good tool even when you have other like group learning or private tutor. So definitely this is useful thing in our digital age. Um, Learning by movies, songs, or books. So this is one of the favorite things that I always recommend my students. So watch and listen. This is two most important things. Like watch the movies that you know already and watch them in original. You will see how different they are in original form. Translate your favorite songs, listen to them in original form, and you will start picking up the phrases, the combinations from them, and sooner or later you will be able to use them in your own speech. And of course, the books are important. um, Interactive games, mobile applications, that's also pretty much computer technologies. We can also use them a lot. Or not if you don't want to. For example, some of my students, they when they get to a certain level, they ask about maybe some specific phrases, you know, from everyday language or stuff. And Urban Dictionary is the good way to understand maybe some phrases from the American movies that you don't understand because it's slang, it's the different kind of language. So that's when Urban Dictionary comes in handy, that's for sure. And it's an interesting way to kill the time when you're Cambridge methodology. I think most of you heard of that. These are one of the most old methodologies, and they are effective, but also they both are based on learning process with a native speaker or the fluent speaker. So whenever you hear, for example, that we have classes with the native speaker, blah blah blah, so it's all based on that. So it comes from them, from the Oxford and Cambridge universities. They developed it first, and they implemented a lot. um, I would say there are a few other methods. I'm not just gonna read through them. You can see them on the screens. I didn't even translate them into English because they are not popular outside Russia mostly. So it's, let's say, alternative methods of learning. They're not really effective from my point of view. So you can use them, you can check them out if you're bored, and maybe have some fun. Like you can try this association method that was used by different special organizations. Or if you're a fan of psychological approach, you can try and check the method that was developed by Ilona Davidova in I think it was 90s of the 20th century. So it's not really widespread, but it has its moments. You can check it out and maybe find something interesting for you. Um, I think I'm gonna just shut up there and finish this. Uh, and I think I have like a bit of time to answer the questions if you have any. I'm just gonna check them on my phone and see what did you write for me. Okay, Dana. Hi, Dana. Well, from my point of view, the most effective way of learning is combining individual learning with learning with the private tutor. Because if you want a boost, if you want to move forward fast, then it's definitely the choice that you have to make. Because learning in a group, it definitely slower than learning individually. And of course, there are like lots of ups and downs in the group because sometimes you have to go back on some topic as a teacher. That, for example, out of 10 students, 5 understood and 5 had some troubles. So these 5 that understood would have to suffer because you have to repeat some moments and vice versa. Um, Teaching groups or individuals. To be honest, I don't have a favorite because I love both. I love to work with the individual students and I love to work with the groups because both of these ways of learning, I find pleasure in both of them. Because when you work with one student, it's one challenge. There is a certain speed, a certain approach, a certain maybe troubles that you can face, challenges you have to figure out. But when you learn with the group, it's mostly like 99%. There is always some fun, and also there is always some kind of this energy cocktail during the lesson that you feel, and especially if you manage to involve all of the members of this group into your process, then you feel this as if you drank, I don't know, like 2 liters of Red Bull and you're like vibrating from their energy. Okay. Good afternoon. How did you learn English? What helped you the most? Well, I am kind of specific situation because I spent most of my life living abroad. I've been living in Syria, if you heard of it. And after I graduated from the school, I went to local Syrian governmental university, and all this learning process, all my courses, they were in English and only English, and all of my friends, they were foreigners. There were foreigners from Western countries and Arabs. So all my communication was in English. I spoke Russian only with my family and uh, some people from the school, let's say from the Russian school. And also, I had no chance to watch movies or something in Russian because I didn't have internet at home. So I was from the beginning, like from maybe age 16, I was watching all the movies, series, everything in original, and I stick to this till now. I don't like watching movies in Russian translation. I watch it in original form, and trust me, you always find something new. You always find something to pick up, and there are like some phrases that really stick to your language. Okay. Any more questions? Anyone wants to ask something? Maybe to clear some questions with the methods, maybe to get some advice. Okay, let's see. Any other questions? Okay, let's say a couple more minutes. If you come up with some ideas, then I'm gonna just answer them, of course. But if not, we're just gonna wrap it up till next Wednesday. Ah, okay. I have a question from Alex. How do you learn Russian better living in Russia? Um, It depends on what you need, because if you need it to, let's say, if you want to have a career or something, then you definitely have to have a teacher. Like I have a couple of students that plan on working here, and we are working on their language from the beginning. But if it's, let's say, for fun, or if you need to feel comfortable during your stay in Russia, then you can have some friends. You can always use, for example, couch surfing. You can find people over there and communicate with them. Like, I don't know, go to the bar. I mean, not now, of course. Go to the bars, go out like for a walk or excursion, and it's gonna help you. And I had some friends like that, and I was teaching them Russian, that's for sure. But also like watching movies or series or even news, or listening to some podcasts or some radio shows. It also very helpful and effective. So anything, everything that applies to learning English, the same goes for learning Russian. And especially if you're in Russia, it's much easier because it would be similar to us learning English being in London or in New York or LA or something. So it goes both ways. So what applies to us learning English or French applies to foreigners who learn Russian. Okay. More questions? Okay. Well, I think that this would be all for today. Um, I hope you got some interesting information from me, or maybe just I put it together for you. So I hope you like it, and I hope to see you next time. I would be on air on Wednesday, probably, talking about what to do on quarantine. I would tell you a lot about different opportunities that opened to us right now, and I think it's going to be fun. So have a good time, and thank you.